So, before to start my video, my second part of the video about the extraordinary ability, I would like to say a little bit more about my special guest.
Well, hey there. How you doing today? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me.
You to imagine that you're going back in time. See as a hallway, and you see your age on each door as you're going back. You see the doorway 65.
Okay, so the first type of haunting that I'd like to discuss is within the realm of what we call human spirits. So a residual haunting is when a moment plays on a loop.
Do you think teleportation and aports are kind of the same thing?
I think so. I mean, that goes to a deeper concept as to whether or not there are some sort of types of aports that are manifested, and when they're exposed to scientific analysis, it's clear that these objects were formed in an unusual way. Their molecular structure is different, and that ties to what I'm sure Simeon is going to talk about when he comes to the UFOs and the crop circles and how the stalks are bent in unusual ways. There is some sort of thing that happens to physical objects when they're taken through that process where there's some sort of rearrangement that I don't fully understand yet, but I'm very interested in this phenomena.
Oh, God, you just gave me one of those the little light bulb goes off in your head. Well, you know how there's some sort of a field of energy that twists, the vortex energy that twists the stalks.
Yeah,
And unlike where people go stomping through with boards to create them, when it's done through that electromagnetic frequency, the plants keep living, and the seeds from those plants that have been affected by the crop circles are producing better output, more seeds. And I'm wondering if that's kind of what's happening with us when we're exposed to these electromagnetic fields from the ships, from the beings, whatever it is, raising us in frequency as well.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, if you're okay, let's move now to UFO and all this C5 contacts. Before that, I want to mention that, I don't know if you know, but I was very close friend with Clifford Stone. He passed away a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I miss him, but anyway. We 7 years ago, I was in Bulgaria, and I make this international UFO conference over there. And Clifford was we have Clifford via Skype, so we make this conversation by Skype, and he started talking about his extraterrestrial friend. Corona, and Corona was with him since he was a kid, and he followed him during his life. And one man from the public, because we have open line for Q&A with the public and him, and one man from the public, he said, Clifford, do you think that if your friend Corona is with you all the time, do you think he can come right here in this conference hall right now? And I have that device who has exactly the same device as Dr. Greer for catching differences in the electromagnetic field. So this device was on all the time and stay quiet. And when this guy asked that question, that device started beeping crazy. And I said, Clifford, what is that? And he started laughing. He said, you know the answer. And everybody started laughing in the hall because that just happened. And then when that meeting finished for the day, we, a group of people, we left to the restaurant for dinner. and we walked, because it was a very short distance from the conference hall to the restaurant. So we walked, and I saw very soft light, like a coin size of coin in the sky. I mean, I love watching sky, so I saw this and suddenly appear and start moving it. And I called the other guys. I said, look at that, look at that. And they looked, all of them, they looked. Unfortunately, none of us has a camera in that time because we're going for dinner, so we're not taking cameras with us. But everybody saw this light. And the next day, I called Clifford and I said, do you know what happened? He said, what? And I said, we saw, all of us, we saw light, and I described what is it. And he said that was a corona sign. One more time confirmation about his existence. And then I said, holy smoke, this is super cool. So let's move in that field for a while, because there's 30 more minutes left. Okay, now is your time.
Yeah.
Your turn.
What have you seen UFO-wise?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, what have you seen UFO-wise, since we're talking about that?
Well, okay, so a couple of the, the first one was when I was a kid. I came out of Scouts in the evening, and there was a white light that was moving back and forth slowly from the north to the south, and it was getting lower. And when it got really low, it was maybe up at about 700 or 800 feet, and it seemed to have this bright light. When I looked up, seemed to be more of a lens, and there seemed to be things moving behind this lens. It seemed to be that the light was coming from inside whatever this was. And as I looked closely, it appeared that there were figures moving around behind this, what may have been a lens or something. And that's the one that was written up in the newspaper, and that kind of got me started. And because it was written up in the newspaper and I had seen it, that I never worried about talking about this subject. You know, many people through their lives are worried about being made fun of and ridiculed, but I never really worried. It's like, well, I saw it and hundreds of other people saw it. It was in the newspaper and so on. And it was a couple weeks later that my friend across the street, and because, you know, I was the kid at school that saw this, so I was kind of like the celebrity who saw this unidentified flying object, or we called them flying saucers. He asked me, I would really love to see a flying saucer. How could we see one? How could I see one? And I said, let's go on the roof of my house some night. And so it was literally a couple weeks later we went up, and to make a long story short, at one point when we were tired and cold after about half an hour or so, I was just about to say we're not going to see anything. And as I said that, there was hundreds of lights that seemed to be up in the heavens, like literally with the stars, that also moved from the north to the south, but in a second and a half, from one horizon to the other horizon in a second or second and a half. And we were blown a bit away by what we saw. And as we were in awe and could hardly speak, and we were kind of trembling with excitement, literally 30 seconds later, this flotilla came back from the south all the way across the sky. And it was hundreds, and it was the speed that no aircraft or birds or anything could travel. It was like a second and a half across the entire sky. But more recently, you know, we're doing documentaries and traveling the world. And as we say, Wendy's come along on some of these expeditions. One of the more famous sightings, you can go on YouTube and see, it's called the Squamish Orb. And it was near Squamish, BC. That's north of Vancouver. There's a rock, a large, what do they call it? A monolith type rock. So it goes straight up. And there's been many things seen around this and associated with it. It's part of the indigenous peoples. It's like a sacred rock for the indigenous people in Canada here. But there's been many interesting and sort of mystical things around this. But when we were when we went there, we knew we were going to see something. We could all feel it. And when we were going around the roads, the logging roads in behind this mountain or in front of this mountain, the one place we stopped, we all knew that we knew when we reached that place that this is where we were going to have our experience. And literally at 10:59 p.m., we saw a yellowish light coming across from behind the mountain, going across, and I quickly ran over and started the green night vision camera, and I captured it. And it's about a 10-second video. And it didn't seem that unusual to me at first because I thought maybe it's an airplane. But all of a sudden, it went into the trees. The trees are lit up behind, and the trees are lit up in front. And it was at that second, you'll hear me say, oh. And that's when I knew that it wasn't anything terrestrial. And there was no sound with it. There were no helicopter blades. There was, no airplane sound. There was nothing. But the most interesting thing that I've managed to capture, and strangely enough, it wasn't with all this high-tech, expensive equipment. I'm going to find it for you right now here real quick. It's in my favorites. I'll just quickly scroll to it. This is the most interesting capture we've got right here. Okay, can you see?
Oh, that's something.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
something.
and there's videos on YouTube where I met Lou Elizondo, formerly of To the Stars Academy, who, ran one of the, was it the ATIP program?
I think he was involved with it.
Yeah, and I met him at a conference, Rich Hoffman's SCU conference, and I showed him that image, and I said, what do you think it is? And he says, I don't think it's the craft itself. He said he felt that was the energy imprint that whatever it was left in the atmosphere. In other words, that's kind of the charged particles glowing for a second in the atmosphere of this, whatever it is, could be a craft, exiting or entering our dimension. So I actually caught it with my iPhone, a simple iPhone. And you will note I used it as my screensaver, but you'll notice it's purplish in color.
Yeah.
We believe that it was actually showed itself in the ultraviolet light range, and that's why we didn't see it with our eyes. I was just taking pictures in the black sky.
You have a full spectrum camera? Was it thermal? Or?
No, just with my iPhone.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about phones in your cameras are they do not use expensive filters. Okay, like if you buy a nice, a Canon camera or Nikon, it has expensive filters so that the light that's catching the camera sensor is your visible range mainly. And it's very careful how it projects the light from outside onto the sensor so that it's visible. So what you see is the same as what you see with your eyes. The filters that they use in camera phones, or phone cameras, I should say, they're very cheap. They don't spend much money on them. So what it actually enables your camera and your phone to get is slightly into the infrared and slightly into the ultraviolet range, so that you can actually, and how you know this is true, just take your remote control for your TV, which uses infrared light. Like if you press a button and look at the LED on the end, you won't see it light up. If you take your camera and put it, especially on the forward-facing camera, press the button on your remote control and have it shine into the camera, and you'll see it light up on your phone. So that's how you can prove that your camera and your phone picks up these other frequencies. So it actually appeared to me that it picked it up in the ultraviolet range. And because the camera was taking the picture at night, I looked on the picture and it was a 1/4 second exposure. Normally, if you take a 1/4 second exposure, whatever you take a picture of is going to be blurred. The rule of thumb is it should be at least 1/60th of a second in order to stop any action, especially action from your hand moving, right? And but that was 1/4 of a second long. So why is the image so sharp? when you look at it, how is it that it's so sharp? Look at the detail on that. Okay, we feel that it flashed in a microsecond. Okay, and it flashed during the time my camera was open for a quarter of a second. That object, in a little slice of time, it flashed, and that's why it appears so sharp in the picture. And Lou Elizondo felt that it was something that was either passing between our dimension and another dimension, something along those lines, because it was only captured in the camera the one time, and I was taking several pictures in a row right after one another. And it was picture number 3 that it got that. And the interesting thing, Armin, about this was that when I look at all the metadata on all the photos I took 80 photos in a row, and for the first 3 pictures, my flash of my camera was disabled. And why was it disabled?
Yeah.
Because there was so much ambient ultraviolet light that it turned the flash off of my camera. And picture number 3, where I actually caught the image of that thing, I was actually facing the object. So maybe it flashed 2 or 3 times, I don't know. In picture 1, I didn't capture the object, but it disabled my flash. Picture number 2, it actually got the object. Okay. Picture number 3, as I turned, there was no object. And then all the rest of the pictures, my flash went off. So those are some of the most interesting things that we've seen in our travels over the last, how many years has it been now?
Wonderful. We have Simon with us. Hello and very welcome. We miss you.
Hey, Iván, how's it going today? Sorry, guys, I had some technical issues. The link wasn't working for me, but we got it.
We're very happy to have you.
Yeah, hey, guys.
All right, so we talked for different stuff here about consciousness, about remote viewing, about the entities who is coming from another worlds. Maybe we have a man, I don't know if you met him before. He's an expert of paranormal investigation.
We've met, yes.
Yeah.
What can you just tell me, because I came in late, where was Rob? Where was that incident that he was just talking about? I was just listening to.
That was Cusco, Peru, back in December 1st, 2015.
Okay.
It was about an hour away from Cusco, Peru, in the mountains, in the middle of nowhere.
Interesting. Thanks.
Hey, and Rob, you've done some beautiful films and you've got them on YouTube. Would you mind mentioning your channel so people can see your videos?
Yes, the YouTube channel is called Rob Freeman UFO World Explorer.
Nice.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
So, Simeon, we were just talking about orbs and remote viewing and wondering if maybe what we're seeing might be other dimensions. And that's something that you've talked about in your blogs. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys probably are aware, I see a lot of these phenomena. I see these as interconnected phenomena. And I think anytime that you're engaging in phenomena that are coming from parallel realities, there are some very common symptoms. And they include what I just heard Rob saying, which is types of camera failure, battery failure, orbs. We're seeing, I think some of this is really coming together. I don't claim to be an expert in all of this. I'm just doing my best, like the rest of you, to put it all together. I started out in RV, spoke to UFO witnesses, crop circles, and now I'm looking into Bigfoot encounters. The same sort of things happen around Bigfoot encounters: camera failure, battery failure, orbs, people losing time. And I think we're seeing some really common patterns here with all these phenomena. And you don't have to agree with me, but I see these as multidimensional sorts of phenomena. RV being like one of the lightest ways you can get involved with it, one of the kind of safe ways to get involved. Just sitting at your desk with a piece of paper. But even with that phenomena, you get orbs. Way back in Farsight, we had a guy there I called him Bob in my book, Opening Minds, that reported an orb coming into the room while he was viewing a Martian target that we had been given by Courtney to look at. And so even way back then in 96, the orbs, something I never heard about before, honestly, folks, I just had come out of graduate school. They're way back, people were reporting these orbs while they're doing their sessions. So I just think there are a lot of commonalities here, Kat. And I think that when you start getting bleed through from other parallel realities, it just messes around with our electronics and our normal sense of reality. And I'm beginning to think what we call reality is really just like 1% of what's out there. And some of us venture a little farther, be it UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever you're looking at, crop circles. As soon as you get that interdimensional bleed through, it starts warping things in a way, and other things happen that we're not used to, including the orbs and all these other kind of phenomena. That's my take.
Thank you. And we didn't get to give you a proper introduction, so I'm going to say, this is Dr. Simeon Hein, and you're up in, is it Colorado?
Boulder, yeah, Boulder. In fact, Iman came to one of my classes once. Hey, Iman, how's it going? He was there with Buddy at one of my intro classes before COVID when we did live, right? We did live classes.
Man, and the stuff I took away, highly recommend this man's classes, highly endorse. For any of you considering learning. He even has an online program. I know I'm giving you a plug right now, but it's really good stuff. And I was just thinking, this is kind of a surreal moment for me because I remember studying your early RV view videos on YouTube like 10 years ago when we were both significantly younger. And now, honestly, I'm in the same room with one of my heroes in the field. So this is just a cool moment for me.
Oh, thank you, Iman. Yeah, no, it was great. Iman was there and we had a great time in the class. So it's great to see you again. Yeah.
Fun stuff.
So are you guys open up for having classes again, or does it all have to be remote right now still?
I'm doing them remotely. I have one scheduled for next weekend, just like a Zoom class, Saturday, Sunday.
Wendy, don't you guys have something similar in how you're teaching people to see blindfolded over the internet?
Well, we have a Facebook page. Wendy, there's the channel. What's the name of the channel, Wendy? The YouTube channel?
Oh, the YouTube channel, it's Seeing Blindfold Training, Wendy Gallant and Mark and Rob Freeman. And then we have our Facebook page too. And we try to help people to, well, we do train some people off and on, but we're trying to promote people to learn and get people working together on our Facebook page, getting partners and doing it over Zoom and Skype. I know Rob's training a few people at the beginning, and I said earlier that I'm really excited about this fellow in South Africa who has a school and who wants to learn and wants to teach his kids. So, but yeah, it's all new and it's all getting out there. So yeah.
Yeah. People can come to the Facebook page. I know you can put the link. There's the Facebook page right there.
Yeah.
But they can come and they can ask if there's anybody else in the group who would like to train online with them over Zoom or Skype. People can teach each other this. You don't need an ascended master to teach this. You know, we've got many people posting videos in the group who have just taught their kids who don't even know how to do it, but they just tell their kids you can do it. And the kids believe them and they do it. Mm-hmm. So that's a good place to learn. There's really not enough teachers in the world of this right now. There's way more people that want to learn it than there are teachers that can teach it. But they can teach the kids themselves.
Thank you. Simeon, can you see a correlation between remote viewing, I mean the technical stuff that was taught by SRI, Ingo Swan's his platform and how he wrote it all down. Do you see similarities between remote viewing and seeing blindfolded and other aspects of telepathic or psychic experiences? Can you tie that together in some way?
Oh, sure. It's a good question. I mean, we have sensory abilities that we don't use and we haven't been even told about. No one ever told us about any of this. It's these latent abilities we have. Ingo Swann thought there were at least 20 physical senses that we hadn't talked about. Physical senses. He talked about this at Austin at the IRVA conference in 2000. too, I believe. And he just said just other senses that are physical, beyond, not even mentioning the psychic ones that we, things we call psychic. So these are all innate natural abilities we have. And I'm not that familiar with, Wendy and Rob's work with blindfolding sensory abilities. But it would be the same idea, is that when you do RV, you're learning to move the conscious mind aside and listening to subtler signals. And I guess another way to do that would be to literally be like Tommy in that Who rock opera. And if you covered your senses, you would start using the subtle senses because you'd have to. And we know this is true from people that have become blind. I'm familiar with a woman, I know this can be very tragic, who became blind just recently, but she said her other sensory abilities took over. There were other abilities she didn't know she had. And I think that we have other abilities. We're just so used to the left linear brain, the logical thinking, the conscious thinking we're taught since kindergarten. It's very early that we get conditioned to narrow the blinders of our perception. But these other ones are there. And I would imagine that Rob and Wendy would agree that these abilities are there, but we just haven't explored them. And it's when you actually decide to take a class or sit down for a weekend and just see what's there, you're surprising yourself that these have been there the whole time. And it's almost like you've been asleep in your life during your waking state. You've been tuned to this program that we call, society and socialization. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just a limiting thing. But the other ones are there, and that's why there's a commonality between RV and these techniques they're talking about. And any sort of psychic, what we call a psychic ability, they're all related in my view. It's not separate phenomena.
For sure. Now, didn't you also teach metal bending in that course with Amon?
That was something we did with Buddy while he was there. Buddy wanted to do the metal bending, and I think we did some of that. They did some of that before I got there in the morning, Amon. So you can tell, I actually missed that part of it, Amon. So you need to listen, because I wasn't there early that morning on the Sunday.
Things that were originally straight left that place bent by the time we were done with it. And I'm not fully sure how that happened.
Now, Wendy's practiced, and she's bent spoons, and I've tried to get them to move a little bit, but she's actually done much better. I still don't understand how it works.
Actually, Buddy actually challenged me to bend a screwdriver last time I talked to him. He goes, "Hey, bending spoons now."
That guy's on another level when it comes to that.
Buddy is a good example of somebody who doesn't know about this, and you have to convince them that remote viewing isn't just woo-woo, it's a real thing. And once I did, and I started showing him some videos, and we started practicing, well, Simeon, you've seen what's happened. He's kind of gone hog wild with it. Now he's got all these scientists that study him. But he had to be told that it was real, that this exists. Everybody has this ability, right?
I am shocked that you told me that, Kat. I never knew that, and I'm amazed that someone like him had to be convinced that RV was real, because you must have gotten to him before me.
Yes, 2018 is when I started working with him. I actually thought he was Russell Targ in disguise. I know, it's so funny, because in the very beginning, he had himself all wrapped up in these hoodies and a mask, and he would talk. He would talk in a special scientific voice.
Oh, yeah.
It's very mysterious. Right.
Psychic X. Yeah.
So I started getting messages.
Ivan, Wendy and I, unfortunately, are going to have to exit now and get set up for our next little video conference. So it's been a fantastic talk for us. We really appreciate being invited on. And maybe we can let you guys continue, but we're going to have to exit.
Nice meeting you and talking to you guys.
Thank you
so much for coming. It's wonderful to see you together and to talk about it.
Okay. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you guys. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Thank you. All right. We have 6 minutes to the end of this, but we can extend a little bit.
Let's give it to Doc.
Yeah, because there's a lot more that I'd love to hear from Simeon.
Let's give it to Doc. We've all talked enough.
No, guys. I mean, look, we're just at the cutting edge. All of this is opening up, in my view. It looks like because of the way our society has gone in the past year or two, that it's like things have ended, it's a disaster. But at the same time, really new things are opening up. I don't think people would be as open-minded if we hadn't had this type of health catastrophe, because it teaches people, people start asking questions. But the questions don't just end at the healthcare system. They have to do with reality. Can we trust science? Can we trust experts? Who do we believe?
Yeah.
And I think these phenomena that all of you are interested in, that we've all been looking at, these are 100% real, that have been just ignored. I read Science magazine every week. Believe me, guys, it's ignored. But that doesn't mean it's not real. No one believed the Wright brothers either. Even after they had flown for a couple of years, everyone kept saying flyers are liars. Well, turned out to be they were flyers.
Simon, I have a question for you. I talked with Kat last night about my lately experiences. It's super weird. I don't have explanation. Maybe you have. So I'm staying in this desk, and I feel that maybe some bug is walking in my arm, and I look and there's nothing. And then the same day I was in the kitchen over there, and I stay in the kitchen, and I feel that in my left leg, something is like an ant or bug is moving, and I look, nothing was there, and then stop moving when I look, and then continue doing something in the kitchen. Then again, I feel the same thing, and I look again, and nothing was there. Sometime I heard about this, not like that experience, but another experience, like I don't have my phone in my pockets, and I have the same feeling like when phone is vibrating, and actually cannot vibrating because it's not in my pockets. Do you know something about this?
No, but I mean, it could be a type of electromagnetic disturbance. I mean, the skin is very sensitive. It can pick things up that you can't see.
Your aura.
Auras, it could be many things. Yeah, it could be, it could be a lot of different things. You can sense things that you can't see. And this,
I
you're
can't
picking,
see, but I feel.
right. You're feeling it, and that could be true. I don't know what it is, but that means you're just picking something up that your eyes aren't picking up.
So, like, to me, what I gather when you say that is that goes into certain people have different primary modalities or primary senses that they experience their psychic abilities through. So not everyone can visually see. Some people, like myself included, are very kinesthetic based. I get very strong gut feelings, very strong intuitions, literally at my solar plexus chakra. So maybe your natural predilection is sensory based. Maybe you're tactile, and maybe one of the ways you relate to these non-physical information is tactilely. So I think you should give yourself permission to explore that.
That's good. I agree with that. Yes.
Well, it's like all of the extrasensory perceptions, or the clairvoyance, claircognizance. What are there, 6 or 7 of those, or the 20 that Ingo had mentioned? Everybody, if they find that they have something that maybe they learn more visually, maybe they learn more by hearing, but you can practice those through the 6th sense as part of your opening up to a greater awareness. But I don't think that it means that you can't trigger all the other ones as well. But yeah, I think you're going to be stronger in some areas than others.
Right. That's right. That's right.
We had also talked about electromagnetic frequencies and how it may be changing us. Now, can you talk a little bit about the crop circles?
This is a really interesting topic, and something I think about every day is there is some electromagnetic disturbance in crop circles you can see in your devices, but it's not purely electromagnetic. It has to be a type of quantum interference. It translates into our devices because they're electromagnetic, fundamentally quantum, right? But they're classical systems. But yeah, you're definitely getting something going on there that filters its way into electromagnetic disturbance, and that's what you see with the static meter and the devices that we've taken in and so forth. So it's another really interesting aspect of this whole thing to me.
Didn't you also pick up on some sort of a sound frequency?
People have reported the sound frequency. I've heard recordings of it. So interesting you're mentioning that, Kat. I was just thinking of that like late last night, this morning, in terms of that sound that people had recorded in crop circles, that trilling sound.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so there's sounds associated with it. It's very mysterious and still really fascinating. It's a real interesting aspect of all of this.
Yeah, and Doc, in regards to the electromagnetic disturbances or like alterations at these crop circles, we were comparing that and the phenomena of teleportation, dematerialization, apports. We were comparing that to how, in my field, the paranormal investigation, we have a similar phenomena at what are traditionally called haunted locations, where there are electromagnetic field disruptions as well. And there's got to be some corollary between the quantum field fluctuations, the crop circles, the ability for things to instantly move between spaces, and how that relates to the UFO phenomena of travel.
Right. No, thanks for bringing that up, Iman. Yeah, it's same thing. Ghost haunted sites, very similar phenomena. That's another aspect of this. You get the same thing. The apports, all this things. Yeah, same sort of phenomena, similar phenomena, different but similar. Yes. Yep.
There's an underlying mechanism that is connected, but it's like the mechanism is the same, but the manifestations of the mechanism are different.
Very good way to put it. That's very well stated. Yes.
When you talk about crop circles tunes, are they different kind of tunes, or they the same all the time? It's repeating the same and the same again? Because I have right now one, and I'm going to play for you.
Yeah,
I've heard that one.
That's what the sound that people have heard. And Stephen Greer used to play that sound in his CSET he watches, because I was over there with him in the UK. And it would work. I've seen stuff with him that I still can't explain to this day, and he would play that sound. And it makes sense because it's resonance. You play the sound, it kind of starts something moving. That's the type of sound people get there. Yep.
So, do you know if there's a different kind of tunes was recorded over there, or?
No, it was pretty much. I remember David Kingston talking. David Kingston was this very interesting researcher that had worked for the Ministry of Defense before Nick Pope. He worked for the Ministry of Defense at one of these nuclear test sites at an island in the South Pacific where they had tons of UFO showing up. He was sent out to see what was going on, and he said they would show up, these things near the testing sites. Like this happens all over the world. This happens everywhere, and it happened in the South Pacific. So he became a crop circle researcher, and I remember him playing that sound for us at one of the Glastonbury crop circle conferences in 1997. So thanks for I haven't heard that sound in a long time. I used to talk with David, and he had recorded that sound, and he was a serious, this is a guy that worked for the MOD. Okay.
When you listen to that tune, do you think we can reading it like a message to convert the tune to the words, or
decode it
to message kind of?
Decode it.
I think it's a little more complex than that, Ivan. You could be correct. I often think that what we're picking up at these sites, these so-called paranormal phenomena, it could be literally the way radio signals interfere with each other. You can get a lot of spurious sounds. It might be communication. I'm not saying that, but I worked as a kid. I used to work with electronics. I used to build Heath kits and Radio Shack kits. You can get all sorts of little signals that are just like part of the interference patterns of waves. It shows something's going on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you know what it is. So that is one possibility. Another possibility, it's just when our reality interfaces with another reality, you get this kind of interference pattern that creates those types of sounds. That's another way to look at it. Both could be true.
So I have a question dovetailing off that for you, Doc. How, in your perception, like, you brought up the concept, Ivan, of communication, and my mind goes to, like, these beings probably already know how we communicate. They can probably speak every language on Earth if they wanted to. They could probably do it directly, telepathically. How do these higher beings communicate with us, in your perspective?
That is a really good question. And the thing is, I believe it's our limitations that are preventing the communication. I think we're surrounded by these phenomena 24/7. I'm not kidding. They're around all the time. It's just that sometimes you and I open up a little bit more during an RV class, or where we're going to a haunted site. I've been out there with the Sci-Fi Channel once at a site in Colorado where we stayed up really late and we were recording sounds. And, at Cripple Creek, one of these haunted locations. And it was haunted because we talked to people the next day in the town. Boy, the stories I heard from local people they all had these stories. It's true. Just it never somehow gets out of the local area. People, but they had anyway. I think these phenomena are around us. It's our perception that's the limiting factor. Perhaps practically it has to be that way. We all have to be functioning, competent adults in the society and do things, have jobs, and, be practical. But the phenomena are there. We just limit it out. When you do RV, you're setting aside these limitations and calming it down and listening. They're very subtle signals. So to answer your question, Ivan, I think it's more a question of, are we willing to go out there to contact it or not? And as you all know, there's a large social stigma against even talking about these. Until recently, I mean, you imagine 20 years ago, you're talking about these things. Fewer people would have been open to this than are now, I think. It's more us than, I think it's more us. So my answer is more us than these intelligences out there. I could be wrong. That's my feeling about it.
But that's why discussion is so important. And that's all I have to say.
Yes.
This is crucial.
We have to make people feel comfortable with all these phenomena. That's okay to explore it, to interact with it. We're missing, our society has missed a lot of good stuff by making these phenomena having a social stigma attached to it. We really think we're modern people, but in some ways we're not better than medieval people that used to burn witches at the stake.
Right.
Now, because of the internet, because of this type of conversation, we can have this conversation without being afraid. But that wasn't true even 30 years ago when the psychology profession in the DSM manual labeled belief in these phenomena as a type of schizotypal syndrome, right? You could have been labeled by a psychiatrist in the 1970s for even this conversation as sort of having schizotypal sort of tendency, type of part of the schizophrenia spectrum of disorder. And that's gone from DSM. Belief in UFOs, I think, is now gone from DSM. But I mean, it was stigmatized formally. And I think all of us that are involved with these topics, we're doing a great service to society to allow people to share their experience without being afraid. So that's that's definitely a big part of it.
Well, I think that's important, is the stigma. And you know how labels are used, like in, say, John F. Kennedy's assassination or Roswell. If you were looking into any of this, you're labeled with the term conspiracy theorist, and they made it sound like you were nuts. The same way in the Bible, if you were looking into numerology or talking to spirits, it's considered a cult. Well, cult simply means hidden, O-C-C-U-L-T.
Right.
But they gave it a stigma like it's something demonic and negative, but it's not. We're tapping into our abilities. And I have to wonder, why has this been hidden and suppressed for, well over 100 years now, unless it's to keep us from using abilities that would make us so much more free and maybe not even need government as it is. We don't need to be told what to do. We have these abilities, even to heal our bodies. But I don't know if I mentioned that with you. I had a spontaneous healing of a 60% heart blockage, and it was through a meditative practice and feeling these positive emotions and just giving thanks as if it was already done. And then I go in for the angioplasty the following, 3 days later, and they didn't know why I was there, because all of a sudden there's no blockage, there's no damage, it was gone. And there's an attorney, Michael Merberg, and he's at the Darby Ranch CE5 group in Florida.
Right, Michael.
He had the same thing, and that was just a few months ago, where he went in expecting to have parts of his heart removed that were damaged. They went in and there was nothing wrong with him. Well, he meditates regularly, and he also does CE5, and they have what he considers some sort of an entities coming into the space. So is it possible that exposure to these different frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies, are changing us? Is it us doing it, or is it something external?
You go ahead. Doc, I had a question about this particularly for you, Doc.
I mean,
was she, or in your perception, when those healings happen, are they shifting to another reality where that problem never occurred?
Yeah.
Or are they changing a reality that is, are they collapsing the waveform, or are they shifting realities, or both?
Oh, this is really good stuff, guys. So to go back first to Kat's question, and I'll get to the answer in a second, Ivan. No. Yeah, we've had this belief we need government for thousands of years. We're dealing with belief systems. There's nothing wrong with government. But government could take different forms. It doesn't have to be a bunch of guys in a capitol making decisions for us. You need some sort of organizing structure, but it doesn't have to be the structures we've had for thousands of years, right? And we've experimented with all these structures. I mean, Iván from Eastern Europe is closer to that, the Soviet structure, which collapsed in 91 or 92 after, 70, 80 years. We have our own structure here, but do we need these structures? And a lot of this has to do with these topics threaten patriarchal centralized control systems, which we've all been around for thousands of years. And you don't take something that's been around for thousands of years and just get rid of it in a week, because there's fear that there's going to be total chaos. But maybe you're right, Kat. We don't need these structures anymore. We can do it ourselves. I'm not saying that's necessarily true. It's just a question we have to ask. And I think that a big part of these phenomena have been labeled as stigmatized. It's not from the power structure directly. It's from people's belief system that it's going to threaten the power structure that they think they need. And so they prefer to go with that versus these. It's easier to stick with the psychiatric profession than to believe that you're being visited at night by grace. It's like totally going into the unknown to believe that ET visitors can come into your home and check you out, even take you out through the window, closed window, transport you into their ship and bring you back. That's weird to a lot of people. It's scary. So they're all going to collectively go back to the older system, but gradually people won't do that as much and say that older system isn't really that great. Maybe we need. So I think that's a big part of it. Now, to go to Iman's question, yeah, you're going to a reality where the problem never existed. That's the way a multiverse person would look at it, that the possibilities exist and you're giving yourself permission to go to the other one where the problem didn't exist. I mean, it's going back to Kat's point about healing. Yeah, there's probably a lot of ways to do it. I even heard about a case from Jim Myers, who runs the Bigfoot museum in Bailey, Colorado, that they were out with a woman who had, I think it was liver cancer, a really severe tumor. And in the middle of the night, there were the classic Bigfoot sounds, tapping on the side of the tent. And when she woke up, the tumor was gone. She knew it was gone because her stomach was now flat. And she went to the doctor and he said, "What did you do? It's impossible." Yep. And she said, they found the little sticks that the Bigfoot was using to tap and do all these things that we don't understand. He said, "Well, I'm willing to believe in Bigfoot because it's impossible. That's good enough for me." It just was gone. So there's probably a lot of healing modalities that are available, and we just assume we have to know everything. Maybe there are other creatures out there that know more about healing our bodies than we even do.
Sure there are.
How much of that could be based on our belief systems? Now, even from a very young age, I was studying the Bible and the different religions around the world. So meditation, all those things were important to me, but I also believed in angels, or whatever we want to call them now, because I think they're just like people, but maybe without a physical body, or what I like to call a meat suit. And in that moment of meditation and healing, I felt a presence in the room. I felt like there were hands on my shoulders. I felt a warmth in my chest, and then it was gone. And it's like, okay, I didn't think anything more of it until I went to the doctor. So could belief structures in religion or out in a tent where you might have a Bigfoot or an ET encounter, could that be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be physical the way we look at it. Look at all the people, near-death experiences, people on operating tables. I've spoke to women that had near-death experiences giving birth, and they told me they could see things that the doctors couldn't even explain how they saw these things while they were clinically dead. But so there's a non-physical component to our awareness. There's no doubt about it. So there could be a whole range of phenomena out there. Now, I don't think we should put down physicality. It's a real experience. Like we're having it right now. There's nothing wrong with it. It's one way the universe works. We shouldn't put it down at all. It's just that there's also other modalities of life. It seems to be what the evidence, and it seems that these ETs, what we call ETs, can shift and change around in ways that are just, like we experience them in a dream state.
Right.
And it's just the way our perception works. We're really we're focused on survival. We're millions of years old as animals, and we are really good at focusing, just like a squirrel on nuts. Humans are really good at focusing on the prize. Nothing wrong with that. It's survival, but that doesn't mean that's all there is. That's all I think what the argument is.
Yeah, and I think the trick is to open up the perception so you can bring in these other things and experience them.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if it's part of reality, why not experience it and interact with it? Why be afraid of it?
I'm sorry, Ivan. Ivan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, when Kat mentioned about that she believed in angels and stuff like this, I remember one of my conversations with Clifford Stone. He was a Catholic, and I said, how your belief in Catholic Church or Catholic beliefs is relating with your experience facing face by face with the life and dead bodies of ETs. And he said, I said, how that happened? And he said, once I had conversation with Corona, his ET, and he asked that extraterrestrial thing if they have a God. And that being said, yes, we have God, and our God is the same like your God. But your understanding for God is different from our understanding of God. Maybe the human understanding of the God is much more primitive with that understanding, and the understanding of the ETs for the God is much more spiritual, if I can say it like that.
Yeah, I actually have something to talk about on that perspective. Two things. The first thing I wanted to mention is in one of Stephen Greer's documentaries, he explains that during his early contact experiences, the God concept was brought up, and the ET said something akin to, look at the beautiful universe God has created. And I think that ties into one of my fields of study, which is the Vedic sciences. I don't know if you're familiar with that word Vedic. It's old Indian yoga stuff.
Yeah.
Very old Indian yoga. And they have a term called Sanatan Dharma, which means the universal religion. And they say, like, the internal understanding of the divine, of God, if you're going for truth, has to be the same here as it is on the farthest star system. And where we have this unifying consciousness, and the reason that when I'm doing CE5 or even doing space clearings at haunted locations, the reason we use mantras, the reason we use these vibrational technologies is so that we can get in alignment with something that goes deeper than our conditioned belief systems, more experiential and less conditioned by fear and trauma. And when we get to those places, we can have these samadhi or oneness experiences. And oftentimes in relation to these cosmic consciousness states, there will be paranormal phenomena happening almost like next to it, not necessarily because of it or as a direct result, but it's happening with it. So like I've seen orbs in the sky when I'm deep in meditation. I've seen lights flashing, physical phenomena will happen. And I think it really goes down to us aligning ourselves with nature. You know, and some people call it the Tao, some people saying like connect with God, get to that oneness state. And when we're in that oneness state, we can not only tap in to our abilities like remote viewing, psychic healing, paranormal investigation, we can also tap into beings that are also in alignment with that state. And we can have these communications like your friend had with Corona. Rapport can be built with non-physical realities. And through that rapport, we can have meaningful interactions. And I think that's kind of what I would say on that.
That just brought me to a thought of, as far as doing remote viewing, when you're tasked with a target, but you can't, all you're given is a number. So Doc, how does that work? When you don't even know what it is that you're tasked to look at, and yet you're able to sit there and start writing down descriptions of it. Yeah. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, that is something I've given a lot of thought to. And what I've come up with has to do with Emmy Noether's idea of symmetry and symmetry breaking. I think that when this is a woman that was still not well known to this day, but she was a physicist who was contemporary of Einstein. She even corrected some of Einstein's equations. She was a brilliant physicist that, yeah. So it has to do with symmetry and conservation of energy. And those random coordinates, when you put them into your mind, because they're completely random, and humans do not deal well with random situations. Our minds are not meant to deal. It's the opposite of what your conscious mind likes. And it disturbs it momentarily. Iván has been there. He's taken my class. You get these random numbers, and it's like your conscious mind can do nothing with random numbers. But that disturbance to it opens up a space for some other information to come in. So it's almost like causing ripples to the pond. And then the energy that comes in, because your intention is on describing something that's distant, technically distant. By disturbing it with the random numbers, it opens up a little space for something else to come in, which, because that target is in your future feedback in half an hour, that starts coming back to you. All those ripples come back instead of the other reality. That's my best explanation of it. It's a type of deliberate disturbance of the conscious mind to allow it to resettle and reorganize. And once that ordinary kind of flow is broken, you get another type of flow coming in. So I think it's a type of conservation of energy. If you had to really push me, that's what I would say. That's a kind of technical physical. I
love that description.
Yeah.
And it ties in with the seeing blindfolded that Rob and Wendy were talking about.
Right.
And I watch their videos all the time because of their remote viewing, and I saw correlations, and I was accusing them at first of maybe telepathically sending the images to the other person.
Oh, right.
But because you wonder, is that the possibility? And then in remote viewing studies and the classes that you teach, some of that's double blind, which means you don't even know what the target is.
No, some of the best targets I've seen were double blind in that room where Iman was, right in that room. Before Iman took the class, we had a big circular desk in there way back when, and we would sit around this huge circular desk. And I remember doing double blind targets where I would pull the target out under this thick oak table, this thick. I put it in the folder. I wouldn't see it. Flip it over, put the coordinates on top, and the person would nail it. So that is not telepathy.
No, it's something else.
It's something else. And listen, guys, every time I see this, it's astounding. It totally shreds your ordinary conception of reality. To see someone in that room or even on the Zoom class at a distance, nailing a target, especially when it's double blind. So yeah, Kat, people often say maybe it's sending, people have argued that to me, even at my presentations at SSE and other places with these ET type target, Pat Price. And some of those, because they weren't double blind. And someone said, well, Pat wasn't double blind on those bases that he came in. And someone said, maybe it's telepathy. It's always tempting to go back to that. But what is even telepathy? I mean, how would that work? How would you even send me a thought?
Yeah.
It doesn't answer. It's just a way to get away from it. But the double blinding, these people who designed RV at Pear Labs and other places, SRI, they weren't dummies. They knew this criticism was going to come up, and they did it double blind. It can be even done triple blind, guys. That's where the computer selects the target and doesn't reveal it until the session's over.
I'd like to get on that.
Or doesn't pick the target till the session's over.
Yeah.
So retroactive.
Yeah, retroactive. Now it still works, and there's something else. It's fascinating. I mean, all these subjects, you just spend a lot of time, as much time as you have left over every day from your regular things that you have to do to see what's going on here. Is there something else going on? Yep. So
I have a question. I have a question. During this RV, do you think it's possible to feel a smell, to recognize a smell?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
Sure, a synesthesia. That's what Kat was saying a few minutes ago, is everybody's a little different in terms of their strength. Some people are better at smells or sounds. Joe McMonagle has always been said he was good at detecting radioactivity at target sites. And he would see it as a green glow in the target area, like kryptonite. I mean, it's something from, Superman and everything, but that's how Joe would view radioactive aspects of targets. And of course he was doing a lot of military viewing, so this is what would come up. So yeah, it's different for everybody. And this is, there's a great book called Brain Rules where the guy that I forgot, he's from University of Washington up near, I think, Iman's area. And he said, everyone's different. We're all wired differently. This is not an Army guy. This is a guy at the University of Washington in this, whatever department he's in, a neuroscience or something. And no two of us are wired the same way. Our school system treats us all the same. This industrial system we live in treats us like these pieces that all fit in the same square holes. But this guy said, Medina, it's really good to go the whole chapter on how we're wired differently. So what that means is when we do RV, we RV differently too.
What can be, I had 2 or 3 times experience like that. In my bed, generally just me. There's not females. And, males also, including.
No judgment.
I just me using my bed.
I get it. Yeah.
Sometimes happened to maybe 2 or 3 times. I just smell very nice female perfume.
Yeah.
That could be a visitation.
That's wishful thinking in your mind. That's what's going on. No, I'm actually being serious. You are you are resonantly connecting with something that you would like to experience. And it's connecting through the ethers in some way. Ingo Swann wrote this whole book called Psychic Sexuality.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Right up.
I don't. In that time when I feel this, I don't have any sexual imaginations or anything like that.
Maybe it's not, but but you see, this goes deep. This point of this book was that what we call paranormal and psychic is biological. It's rooted in sexual reproduction. This is how animals find other mates. It's psychically. You all know, we're all adults here. This is how sexual attraction starts. Ingo believed it started with something psychic. So so I'm not saying that's what you're experiencing, Iván, but people do say they experience smell. This is very common, as Iman would know from ghost sites, where there's the ghost, the person who might have been there 100 years ago smoked a cigarette, and the ghost hunters smell that cigarette smell. What is going on there?
So I think a large part of what we're talking about here, especially with what you were talking about, Ivan, in that, so you say you were in your bed, you were probably right at what we call the hypnagogic state, right at that theta gamma brainwave, right between sleep and awake, maybe even down into delta, even, who knows? But your brainwaves were right at the place where you're naturally receptive to these emanations that might have been in your environment. Who knows whose perfume that was? It could be like what Doc said about something having to do with your timeline, future projecting. It could also be you tapped into the energy of someone who was earlier in that room who had that perfume. And as you already mentioned, you're tactilely based in your energetic senses. So you might be tactilely based. You might have like olfactory or smell based. It seemed the impression I get from you, Ivan, is that a lot of your stuff comes kinesthetically, like through the senses. So I think when your mind gets to that slowed down state, when you get to that alpha, theta, maybe even theta, gamma, that range of brainwave frequencies, I think you're open enough and you pick up on these surrounding frequencies that your subconscious mind then filters to you through the mechanism of smell or touch to give you information. It's kind of like in remote viewing. Let's say I have a circular target. My mind might give me the imagery of a Ferris wheel to be symbolic of a wheel with spokes in it. It's probably not a Ferris wheel, but there's an analog in my subconscious mind. So the smell that you experienced might also be an analog in your subconscious mind that is in fact symbolic of something else that might glean you some insight if you chose to meditate on that smell.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Iman, is that in RV, once we label it, it's really hard to get away from being locked into what you think it is. And I've had to stop my sessions and go, wait a minute, I'm only want to describe parts of it and not try to label it, because I don't want to be locked into that. And when I did that and let go of everything else that my left brain wanted to filter, what do you call that, Doc? Stray cats and
analytical overlay,
yeah. So to let go of what I think it should be and to just describe it. And I think that is the same way when you're doing your sensing blindfolded. All of this is so related, but it also makes me wonder, some of the things that we pick up, maybe space and time are really jumbled together, everything happening at the same time. And maybe that's why we're able to pick up on it. Like the Big Bang, anything that's ever happened is already done, and we're just tuning into it. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, when I play guitar, right? Kat, I know you're,
which I
and
love
I know
to
you're a
listen
fan. We're
to.
a fan of the same artist, Michael Hedges and others. Yeah, there you go. But isn't it enjoyable, the progression of the song from the start to the end? When we go into multidimensional reality and everything's happening at once, you don't have that same pleasure. So there is a reason for time to exist, which is for music. We wouldn't have music, the beauty and the feeling of it, the way it builds up in your body, the feeling of a song. We can listen to the same song over and over. How many times have we listened to Stairway to Heaven? It never gets old. That's a time phenomena. So it's sort of like, which way do you want to go on the dial? If we go to more time, we can have these enjoyable experiences like taking a hike and doing things that, seeing the sun go, beautiful things that involve time. And if we go more into the quote unquote paranormal, the resonant side, it's actually more jumbled together, and it's a different sort of experience. It's not better. It's a different type of experience. And it's up to you. I mean, people have no education in this. It's up to you how far you want to go into the timeless realm, where it's all sort of, you could access almost everything, kind of like a computer. Computers actually are pushing us in this direction.
Oh yeah, the quantum computer systems are wild.
Even any computer, random access memory, where you can just don't have to go by time. You can just randomly access. Or the temporal experience that we're all used to musically, and other experiences that have a progression. It's sort of, they're just both varieties of experience. We've been educated to believe that only one is real, the temporal one, but they both exist next to each other. So, but guys, I'm going to have to go in a few minutes. So I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Me too.
But let's do this again sometime.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one more question before you go?
Yeah, sure.
And this is from the musician side. Yeah. There are certain songs that really affect you on an emotional level, either bringing you up high or making you feel sad or making you feel love. What is it with music? How does it do that? How does it affect our emotions?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
But it does happen, right?
It does, because every time I listen to albums from the 70s that I listened to growing up in my parents' house back in New York, I can remember the month that the album was released and the smell of being in my parents' house. My mom still lives there, but it was in the 70s, it was a long time ago. I remember the feeling of being a teenager, and the smells, it's like the smells come back of that summer afternoon when, one of those Zeppelin albums was released, and you went down to the store and you paid your money from your paper route money, and you brought the album back and you put it on. And you remember the feelings and what was for dinner that night. I mean, I don't know how that's okay. Maybe what's going on is you're tapping into that resonant space where it still exists. It could be memory. I mean, that's what a brain physiologist would say. It's stimulating the memory, but maybe it's bringing you back to that point in time that still exists, on the timeline.
The 70s are like my favorite time of life, with all the music that was coming out.
Incredible.
And I guess you call it a significant emotional response. Those are the things that you don't forget.
I mean, think of the albums that were coming out then. Pink Floyd, Queen.
Cat Stevens.
They were new, those albums back then, on a record. And you can never forget the first time you heard those songs. The feeling, it still comes back. For me, 40 years later, incredible. 50 years.
What's interesting for me, and I know you've got to run, so thank you for being here, and I wish you had come in earlier.
It was late. The link said meetings ended. I couldn't figure it out. Well, let's
This is-
talk. Let's stay in touch and do this again sometime, okay, guys? And I'll be there on time next time, all right?
Okay, thank you very much, all of you guys. Have a great day. Love you.
You too.
Next
Bye-bye.